You know, guys, I have a coworker that I consider a friend. And we've worked together for years, just like all of my other coworkers, and a lot of us are friends. We've seen each other through marriages, through divorces, through births, through deaths, through just about everything you can imagine, illnesses, everything. And we've had our ups and downs. You know, it's weird, the workplace, because when you work a career together with a bunch of people, then after a while, they do kind of become your extended dysfunctional family. And if you do it right, you develop a thick skin, whereas you can joke about just about anything, and you can play around and everything. You got to have a thick skin. And one of the things that I always found amusing about this one particular guy is that he can joke about just about anything. But for some reason, he takes great offense, as it turns out, to being called a scumbag. A scumbag. I don't know what that means to him, that he would take such offense to that. But as I said, when you work with people long enough, you start to realize what their pet peeves are and certain things that kind of trigger them. And it turns out being called a scumbag is something that he just will not tolerate. You can call him just about anything else in the world, but never call him a scumbag. So one of my other coworkers who came on a little bit later than us, I was having a conversation with this guy, and I said, you know what? The funny thing about that guy over there, you can call him anything in the world, but you can't call him a scumbag. That really sets him off. Now, this other coworker, I guess he must have filed that in the recesses of his mind, because I don't know, maybe months later or whatever, he got into it with this other coworker. And don't you know, the first thing he did was remember that I told him that the other guy doesn't like to be called a scumbag. So what do you think the first thing he did when they got into a back and forth was? He called that man a scumbag, and it escalated from there. And I mean, it was okay. We were able to diffuse the situation, but it really made me understand the nature of human beings. Whereas when we get into it with one another, whether it's an altercation or whatever, when feelings and emotions get high and get hot and temperatures rise, a lot of times we'll go straight for the jugular. We'll go for what hurts you based on what we know of that person. So he wouldn't have known to call that other person a scumbag if, unfortunately, I didn't tell him. I felt bad about that, but I wouldn't have known if that person hadn't made it known to me that calling him a scumbag would trigger him. So for my part, I was sorry about it, but I realized people only have the strength that you give them to use against you personally. Okay? Now, I bring that up because I want to talk about Mr. Marc Lamont Hill. Okay? We're going to get into Marc Lamont Hill's head here as much as we can anyway, because Marc Lamont Hill, by the way, this is another Mark with a C, so ashamed, but yeah, Marc Lamont Hill went on to Piers Morgan this past week, and he decided that he was going to make a complete fool out of himself by playing the ultimate racial victim. All right, so let's talk about this, guys. This is the Gospel According to Mark with a C. He is I, and I am he, just taking some time to tell you exactly what's on my mind. Thank you for joining me once again, my friends. I hope all is well with you. Now, as I started off to say, Marc Lamont Hill went on to Piers Morgan's Uncensored podcast, and he was on there to talk about this whole thing with, what's her name? Shiloh Hendricks. The woman who was on the playground, and she called some 5-year-old, allegedly, she called him a racial slur. And, of course, everybody blew up about it. And the freaky thing about it is that for some reason, people started donating money to this person. And she might even have like $1 million by now. It's like people have decided that, you know what, we've had enough. We're going to make a statement here. She's speaking for all of us. Everyone's fed up with being held to these standards. And, I talked about this before. People just have this black fatigue thing going on. The whole Black Lives Matter, all of that stuff. People are just tired of it. So every time they get a chance, they're going to make it known how they feel about this, right? So Shiloh Hendricks used a racial slur for, towards this 5-year-old person, and now she's probably going to get substantially richer for it. All right. So anyway, fast forward here to Piers Morgan. So you have Marc Lamont Hill, and he's on a panel with a couple of people. I think Myron Gaines is on there. And you also have somebody who, let me see, I'm not too familiar with her, but her name is Lily Gaddis. All right. So Lily Gaddis is on the panel, and she decides that she's going to start talking tough. She says that she's a racist. She's admitting that she's a racist. She says that she uses the so-called N-word all the time, she says. And they have their little debate over it. They're going back and forth. Marc Lamont Hill, he's being extra emotional, as I've seen him be a couple of times on Piers Morgan. It's like he leads with his emotions, which usually makes him look like totally unhinged. Even if he's got a point, you got to keep those emotions in check, Marc Lamont Hill. But anyway, so he's not having what she has to say. The debate goes about as well as you think it will go. It gets towards the end of the debate when it gets interesting, because after everything has been discussed, Piers Morgan is asking Lily Gaddis, with all that we've talked about here, are you still proud to proclaim yourself a racist? Are you still proud that you regularly use the N-word? I mean, I've always hated that, by the way. I think a lot of where we went wrong in this society is we stopped saying these words. The N-word, we said. I've always felt like that was some BS. It's like, say the word nigger. It's like, that's what it's supposed to be. We have it all over pop culture. Every rap song that you can name is saying nigger. Of course, they try to say that it's nigga, but this is no different. I've never liked it. I've never used it except to reference it as you see me doing now, right? But anyway, Piers Morgan decides that he's going to pin her to the wall. All right, you're so proud to be a racist, then you, on this podcast, go on and proclaim it. Say it. Say the word nigger. And I'm going to play this little soundbite off of my phone, low budget here, and I'm going to show you what Marc Lamont Hill's overreaction was to this, okay? Where he went off the rails. Okay, so that was the build up to it. So here it is. Here we go.
And I don't want to live in a country where you can say an inappropriate, rude thing, which, by the way, black people can say things to white people all the time and they never get canceled. There's no backlashing about this. I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly. And you will
go
not
on, then
have
say it. Say
you
the
will
M-
not have
Go on, say the M word. Go on.
No.
I
don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here, one Uncle Tom on the left here, and asking her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here with a Jewish person and say, please use a Jewish slur in front of this Jewish. It's ridiculous. I understand you don't have any bad intent, Piers. I understand what you're trying to do, but we already know she's racist, and I don't want to.
Okay. So there you go. Marc Lamont Hill loses his freaking mind at the very thought, the very idea that somebody can say the N-word in front of him. As I said before, I wonder how much hip-hop Marc Lamont Hill listens to, where he can hear this N-word freely being said and not feel like the victim. I'm the victim here. You can't say that in front of me. I'm the only one. I mean, like, leave alone the fact that he is totally identifying himself as this so-called N-word. Once again, my point that I've always said, I'm the same guy who says I'd rather be seen as human being. I consider myself a human being first before black, because black means so many different things to so many different people. I said it a million times, right? So I'm not being inconsistent here when I say that you are as you identify. So he identified himself as the only, quote, I'm quoting here. He said, I identify myself as the only nigger on this panel. He said it, okay? If I'm sitting on that panel and in my regular life, I don't identify as that. I don't use that word. I don't use it towards other people. I definitely don't use it towards myself, okay? So you would never see me get lit like that at the very thought of it. I don't think that Marc Lamont Hill understood what Piers Morgan was trying to do. I don't think that Marc Lamont Hill is as familiar with the civil rights movement as he might like to think that he is. Because in the civil rights movement, It was about showing people themselves, showing people the ugliness of how they were being racially, right? They had the right to do this. Nobody was saying you don't have the right to be ugly, be racist, discriminate, or whatever, in your heart anyway. I mean, you can't discriminate as far as denying somebody a job. That's part of what it was also, equal opportunity. But it was about showing people the ugliness of that particular side of their nature, right? I will use for an example, last week, I did, actually 2 weeks ago probably, I did my commentary about the movie Sinners. And my brother Damaj and I, my Dark Council brother, shout out to him, Damaj and I, retweeted and he shared my video. And I thank you for that, Damaj and I. Damaj and I, he's just the best. He always does that. You know, when nobody else does, Damaj and I always make sure that he shares my videos, you know. So thank you for that, D. And he shared it, and some random person came on there and decided they were going to insult me and insult black people, you know, where they were saying that we're subhuman. He accused me of not being able to read or write. And I was like, okay, I don't even know this person. They don't follow me on X, on Twitter. I don't even know where they came from. But I did see that several people that I do follow him, which is why I got to start cleaning house. Because if y'all following people like that, I don't want to fuck with you, right? But anyway, I go on to ask this person, since you feel so strongly about brown subhumans, and that's what he called so-called black people, brown subhumans, I say, tell me, sir, how would you personally handle your state's brown subhuman problem? I'm asking him, what would you do? Because he is seriously implying that he would love to wipe out black people or deport them or whatever the case may be. You know, you have a lot of that on social media. They'll say it without trying to directly say it because they don't have the balls to actually say it because they know how it would make them look if they did. So my thing is, go on, put it out there. Say it. Say it. Say you want black people wiped off the face of the earth. Say that the country would be better off without them. After all, we commit most of the crimes, right? They keep making these cases as to how life would be so much better off without black people. Just go on and say it and see what it looks like. Go ahead. Hear yourself say the words. Let your loved ones hear you say those words in 2025. After all the history that we've shared in this country, after all the contributions, all that stuff, people are convincing themselves that black people are useless and we've done nothing to contribute to the country. We're nothing but leeches, parasites. So go on, say it. This is what Marc Lamont Hill doesn't understand. This is actually the way we begin to communicate. Say how you feel. You know, you don't have to shut people up, you know, when you're on a panel and maybe you forgot Marc Lamont Hill, but you're literally on a podcast named Uncensored. Okay? So you don't get to sit there and throw yourself on the floor like some spoiled 2-year-old, you know, going through your terrible twos, talking about, no, you can't say that because I'm a nigger and you're going to offend me as a nigger. He actually said that. That's not me. He said it, right? How pathetic does that sound, right? It goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video. You must realize, in the case of Shiloh Hendricks and everybody else out there, every white person who's going to use that word, they're going to use the word that they think will hurt you the most when they're mad at you, when they're enraged. If they know this is what triggers you, you got a 99.9% chance that they're going to call you that. If they knew that the word asshole was going to trigger you, they would call you an asshole. All right? And how would you look on the same panel if someone said, go ahead, use the word asshole. Call him an asshole. Go ahead. No, I'm the only asshole on this panel. You can't call me that. I would be the victim of that. You sound crazy. You know, but this is what we're dealing with. And we don't seem to understand that. We are as we identify. All right? I know that it's inconvenient. It's an inconvenient truth for me to say this. But I've been alive for a good amount of years. And I feel comfortable in telling my truth. I know a lot of people don't want to hear it. But the fact of the matter is, I have never in my entire life been called a nigger, the N-word, to my face by a white person. Never, I said, never. Okay? I can't say that about other black people. The majority of the time, as a matter of fact, the total amount of times that I've been called the N-word, a nigger, to my face has been by other black people. And you might want to convince yourself that somehow this is better, but it's not in my mind. It never has been. I can honestly say that. If you go back in my vast catalog of videos, you will never hear me calling anybody else a nigger. If I'm saying the word, it's for a reason. That's why I can say the word. I don't worry about someone saying, oh, you use that word, you must be a racist. No, I don't worry about YouTube demonetizing my video. I don't care. In case you guys haven't noticed, YouTube has gone to work on my channel for years anyway. You know, I'm the only person you know who gets the positive feedback that I do with my audience, yet my subs continue to drop. I'm talking about by the thousands, bro. You know what I mean? So YouTube is going to do what it does. But freedom of speech is something that is very important, even when you don't agree with it, even when you don't like it, even when it's ugly. The only question is, what does it mean to you? How do you handle this? How do you handle these things? I'm not saying that white people haven't called me nigger, maybe behind my back. Maybe they've seen me and they reject what I'm talking about and everything like that. I just told you some guy came on X and said that I was illiterate. You know, I can't read, I can't write, I can't spell, I'm subhuman. You know what I mean? People are going to do that, bro. People are going to do that. You can't control that. You can't make everyone love you. And that's another one of the earliest videos that I did. It was actually entitled, No One Has to Love You. But for some reason, we like to play gotcha. We like to play smoking gun with that particular slur. You know, just because somebody says it, it's like game over. Got you, got you. Got what, bro? Did you ever think that people just loved all black people? You know, doesn't work that way, man. You know, but Marc Lamont Hill, man, you're not doing us any favors. You know, that wasn't the most masculine thing that you could have done. It wasn't the smartest thing that you could have done. It was the most emotional thing that you could have done. But guess what? Your emotional outbursts and objections, they're not going to further the conversation. Okay? So, yeah, while I don't agree with people using racial slurs at all, we taught them how. We really have. You know, we could stop using the slur. We could stop acting like the slur. And we do. We have a whole pop culture that's been dedicated to acting as ignorant or as niggardly as possible. We do. You know, I know, like I said, it's not going to win me any popularity contest to say this, but it's the truth. So until we do better, until we teach our kids better, this is going to continue to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And guess what? It's not going to offend me when I hear other people doing this. I'm not going to like it. It might disappoint me, but it's not going to offend me personally because I don't identify that as that, number one. And number two, I know that I can't change it. And I know that people are human beings, man. You know, they have their experiences. They see what they see. They feel how they feel. And what are they being shown all over pop culture, all over TV, all over the internet? They show so-called black people acting like niggers. That's what they do. You know what I mean? So if we're playing into it, if we're identifying that, then that's what they're going to do, you know? And what's the worst thing that you can call a black person? A lot of times it's the N-word. What's the worst thing that you can call a white person? These days, probably a racist. So the same way that we embrace, too many of us embrace the word nigger and the attitude of one, is the same way that you see white people embracing the word racist and the attitude of it. And it doesn't mean anything to them at this point to be called that because people just keep calling them that for the smallest of things, you know? So this is where we find ourselves, guys. I refuse to play the game. All I can do is be on the outside making my commentary, and there you have it. Now, guys, it's your turn. You can get in the comment section. You can let me know how you feel about all of this. As always, you can like, you can share, and for what it's worth, you can subscribe, even though I'm pretty sure your subscription will be taken away in just a matter of time. But hit the notification bell anyway. And as always, you can contribute to the channel if you like by hitting that super thanks feature on each and every one of my videos. All right, guys, that's it. I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for listening. This is The Gospel According to Mark with a C. Rock on.